Everyone knows you can't predict the future, but can you see into the future? Can you get a glimpse of the future? Just a little bit or perhaps more? The answer to that is yes. And I'm going to be discussing the future of the public healthcare information system. And I'm going to be focusing on what I call the midterm future, which I would define as starting about 3 years from now and going out to about 7 years from now. So today is September 1st, 2020, and let's ask the question, where are we with public health right now? What's the current state of public health? There are a myriad of public health issues. I don't have time to go over them. I think the latest is globally, air quality appears to be the #1 public health issue planet-wide. But today I want to talk about the COVID-19 pandemic. Perhaps we're just at the beginning of it. It's obviously a historic event, and there's a lot to be learned from this pandemic, in part because most people say more pandemics will be coming. They will be ushered in. This is not the last. Perhaps more will be serious. And so we really need to get our act together as far as preparing for pandemics. But I would submit that the most important things that we can learn from COVID-19 aren't really about pandemics per se. They're about the way public health interacts with the larger society, our economy, our culture, our society, our institutions, our civilizations. That's what I want to focus on briefly this morning, and try to pull out of that situation the best and most powerful lesson we can learn about how public health affects society and how we have a need for better management of our public health care information. So the reason that we can get larger lessons from a pandemic is because it's become very obvious that a public health issue can trigger enormous cascades of effects of our economy, of our societies, that go way beyond the immediate health effects of the pandemic as experienced by the people that die or suffer from the disease. Here we have tens of millions of people that are unemployed, huge sectors of the economy being reorganized. We have social unrest, and a snowball of effects is happening, and we don't really know where it's going to end. We just know that something about this public health issue has set our society off on a new trajectory. And I think, at least for me, I intuitively sense that a new phase of civilization is being ushered in. So it's kind of scary. What can we learn about the public health crisis and how we need to improve our public health information infrastructure? So let me explain to you what I understand about public health and the meaning of public health. I think public health as a concept implicates our institutions and our society on the broadest scales. We're talking about, in this country, hundreds of millions of people. We're talking about billions of people worldwide, their wellness, their physical health, their mental health, alleviating their suffering. And it's an enormous responsibility to address public health. And it's a real privilege for me to talk about this briefly. And I hope that at least something I say can help people devise a new game plan for how to improve our public health systems. So here we are at the beginning of the new millennium, experiencing a pandemic. Environmental issues are coming to an unfortunate head, and it occurred to me that it would be good to stop a little bit and take stock of, at the turn of the millennium, what is the most relevant aspect of our science that we can focus on to understand what's going on. If we really want to have a good paradigm, if we really want to have a good approach to rethinking things, what should we focus on? What aspect of science? is the most relevant. Is it quantum mechanics? Is it the theory of relativity? No. Let's focus on what we should know about science right now. And so here we have our first new slide. It's very modest. How should public policy view reality? In order to develop a new paradigm for public health, we really have to focus on a fundamental process that's occurring in the universe. That is that the universe is expanding, it's unfolding, it's unraveling, its symmetries are breaking. And as a consequence of that, the universe is always becoming less organized. What's ordered becomes disordered. What's usable becomes less usable. And this is described as the movement towards entropy, disorder. The universe is always getting disordered. Now, the profound thing that we have to understand is that there's a way for the universe to order itself. The universe can become organized. And the way this happens is through flows of things. Matter, energy, or information can start flowing into a space. And as that happens, networks are formed. There's some sort of a communication, and this flowing takes on the attributes of a system. Something new emerges, something is given life. It's not a thing, it's becoming. It's a flowing system of matter, energy, or information. And what we call this is a complex system, all right? What a complex system does is it decreases the entropy of the universe. This is how the universe orders itself. And it's mammothly important on a macroscopic scale, this idea of complex systems. And so the reason I'm bringing up complex systems is they are what order things, and the public health information management system has to really embrace that all its constituent parts are complex systems. Our system of life, our climate, the behavior of our climate, the way our ecosystems are adjusted to the climate, our economy, our cultures, our communities, our minds are all complex systems. So I guess one could say, well, who cares? Who cares if they're complex systems? Well, we really have to face and embrace reality. We have to understand what we're studying. And public health practitioners, I think, or one way to view things would be that if they're a physician, if they are physicians, they are physicians to society, they are physicians to these interacting, multifaceted, complex systems. Okay, so once you understand that, you have to understand a critical point, is that these systems are ordered by exponential relationships. They have catalysts, they grow exponentially, they decay exponentially, and sometimes what happens is that these complex systems, like our economy, like our ecosystems, they do what's called transform. They won't just get bigger or smaller, they'll completely reorder themselves. And it's in a shocking way, it's not just change, it's the difference between a caterpillar and a butterfly. And something happens to trigger these transformations. We speak of thresholds, we speak of bifurcation points, sometimes we speak of tipping points, which I think is confusing because it kind of gives the idea of a seesaw. But a tipping point, a threshold, really triggers a shocking transformation where things can become completely different very rapidly. We're talking like a mass extinction, we're talking like a depression, we're talking about these rapid changes in nature which are triggered by a very tiny input. So once you understand that, you really, I think, can understand the biggest takeaway, at least in this part of what I'm talking about, is that because you cannot predict the future, you don't really know where these tipping points are. And you also don't know what's going to happen after the transformation. If you knew where all the tipping points were and you knew what was going to happen in the transformations, you really could predict the future. But because of the way the universe is unfolding and because of the way complex systems evolve, we don't know when we're going to cross a threshold exactly. We can try to kind of pin it down. We don't know what's going to happen after the transformation. And so this is a mammothly important thing for all policymakers to understand, including in particular public health practitioners, that we're always on a precipice of a mammoth change. And this argues for extreme conservatism in our life support systems, our health and our wellness. And it should give tremendous leverage to policymakers in promoting reforms, is that if we get it wrong, there are going to be consequences that we really can't imagine, that we really can't predict. And this is exactly what's happened with the COVID-19 situation. There was a trigger which cascaded into massively important waves of change to our economy, to our mental health, to our employment situations, to the health of our arts, to international travel. One could go on and on and on and on. But did we foresee that? Intellectually, we knew there could be a pandemic, but there was no way for us to conceive of the incredible transformation that is currently ongoing. So I've called this policy blindness, and I think it's a big deal that we should keep in mind that another COVID-19 type transformation could happen at any time. So let's talk about the futurist part of this. How can we talk about what's going on in 3 to 7 years if we can't predict the future? Well, one of the most important complex systems in our society are our interlocking systems of technology. They are complex systems and they grow exponentially, like many aspects of complex systems, like a virus, for example. Our technology is pretty much constantly moving forward, and one can extrapolate, and people have extrapolated for decades now, about the increase in the power of technology. There are laws like Moore's Law that allow you to understand the doubling rates of technological growth in computing power, throughput, storage, things like that. And so if one applies those well-settled approximations, one can conclude that in 7 years from now, at the end of this this midterm future period that I've laid out, technology will be anywhere from 10 to 25 times as powerful as it is today. And it's pretty powerful today. It's enormously powerful today. So to think in a few years it will be 25 times as powerful, and then shortly after that 100 times as powerful as it is today, is bringing us to a point of just mind exploding technological power, a form of a crescendo is what I'm calling it. So this is what's going to happen during this midterm future, is this crescendo of technology. This doesn't even take into account things like quantum computing, artificial intelligence, transformations in the technological world that will accelerate our advances even more. So besides just getting more powerful, I want to talk about probably the most profound technological change that we've experienced. It's the World Wide Web, and it's this personal device that everyone is addicted to. People sleep with them, they get anxiety attacks when they can't find them. Your smartphone, your cell phone is a computer, It's connected to the cloud, and there are, as they say, there are apps for everything. There are over 400,000 health apps. So during this technological crescendo, these personal devices, and they're already doing this, are going to be able to sense health information, all kinds of health information, organize it, send it to repositories on a scale during this crescendo that's really unprecedented. More importantly, perhaps, these personal devices have a way of affecting our behavior and controlling our behavior. So during this midterm future period, all these technological advances are going to create what I've called here Uber databases. Okay, what's an Uber database? Is it just a big repository of information? I think that's not really what I'm talking about. An Uber database would be a huge amount of information, much of which is medical and traceable to the person who is associated with it, identifiable, personally identifiable, combined with other information again, on a scale that is unimaginable now with increases in cloud computing and quantum computing. These Uber databases are going to be incredibly complex information systems, and I'm sure they're arising, and they are capable of encompassing tremendous amounts of medical information. So this is something that is available to the public health care professionals, a much more robust use of complex information systems, which include a huge amount of personally identifiable information on all kinds of scales collected by intimate handheld devices. And let's just think, if we had had a more sophisticated information management system, we would have been able to deal with this COVID situation, I think, better. The combination of our cell phones with our more powerful computing really allow us in a way to control our cultural evolution. And on the flip side of that is because they control our behavior so powerfully, they're able to control our minds, okay? So getting a handle on these advances really could lead to public health's greatest triumphs, to really maximize the use of these emergent Uber databases. So let me throw in a brief kicker here, and that is where we are in the history of the planet and the history of our civilization. I think most people agree that we've been on an unsustainable path now as a civilization for centuries, and we've now run out of time. We have to evolve towards a sustainable society. And in my opinion, where we are in history with COVID-19 is now is the time, during this reassessment of values, this revaluing of health versus dollar signs, the reorganization of our economy, this is the time when we should try to transition to a sustainable economy. The only way to do that is to transform in the face of what's going to be increasing chaos, okay? So now is the time to do that, and the public health information infrastructure, the public health practitioners really need to understand that COVID-19 means the beginning of the transformation of our civilization into a sustainable civilization. And I really think it's now or never. I don't think we can wait until we come out of the rapid changes that COVID-19 has triggered and then start thinking about it. Now is the time. It's kind of the climax of civilization and the planet. So that's where we are in history. How are we doing so far on managing our health information? I'm not going to comment on it, but I think we can take a look at how we've handled COVID-19. I think we've probably done some things pretty well, and I think in other areas there are rooms for improvement, and people will be analyzing that for years to come and trying to improve. So if you wanted to rethink things in the light of where our COVID-19 experience, you could try to devise a more realistic public health information system. I'm just going to call it realistic. That will be a big job. It's a necessary job. It's a critical job. It's the only way we're going to evolve into a sustainable society, is to evolve a more realistic public health infrastructure. Urgency, any strategy that's devised has to be an urgent strategy for the reasons I just mentioned. We have to start evolving sustainably now. I think people could have the freedom to imagine a new function, a new structure, new systems, new ways of handling information to meet these challenges, which are going to be occurring in a time of chaos, because during transformations, the old order, the old organization, and the old systems decay exponentially. Things fall off, and then it takes a while for them to get reorganized. And this, of course, is what a mass extinction is. So we can come up with new strategies. We have to adopt a more ecological thought in our public policy. And I would submit that affecting human behavior and trying to make human behavior more aligned with wellness really gives the biggest bang for the buck as far as upgrading our public health information infrastructure. And we will have the ability to do it because we will have the citizens communicating with each other and with the cloud, with their personal devices, in ways that can improve wellness, physical health, mental health. Using those same communications technologies, we can affect our social groups, our culture, our economies, our ideas, in addition to increasing the more traditional functions of the public health sector. So during our transformations, during our transition, there's going to be chaos, okay, in many areas. And I think it's going to affect people's health, including their mental health. That's obviously already started. So as we started off discussing what's the best way to meet chaos, to fight against chaos, it's the fact that the flow of information is one of the things that can decrease entropy. Information flows are what order reality. Information flows create systems. They create complex systems. Excuse me. So this is how we can evolve, is building a system that facilitates very robust and healthy information flows and coordinates them through what I would say would be catalysts, values, understandings, ideas, facilitating the flow of communication so that new complex information systems can arise. Well, this is our best big picture way to address coming public health crises, is through designing our information flows to order reality in a way that increases wellness, physical health, mental health. Of course, the devil's in the details, but now is the time to start rethinking a system along these more general lines. It's perhaps the noblest calling one can think of, to be a physician to hundreds of millions of people, if not billions of people, designing the flow of information to alleviate suffering. So I'm going to end with what I call the ethical dilemma here. These Uber databases, these complex information systems with huge amounts of information, I'm sure they're starting to emerge. They probably already exist. They will proliferate and become more powerful. And there is a tremendous opportunity to use them constructively to try to maintain wellness during these transformative years. But because of that very power, there's huge dangers and abuse, and you can use your imagination there. Improper use of information in many ways. I'll just leave it at that. So that's the issue. Potential for tremendous good versus potential for tremendous harm caused by these Uber databases. And given all these factors and where we are in history, it's really time, I would suggest, for and I hope someone that's listening to this will feel this way and do something. Really, the smartest people in medicine need to, I would suggest, it wouldn't hurt for them to start rethinking how we manage information and have information flowing among all these different aspects of society, from the individual and their behavior on through different social groups, the networks of minds that are now operating on social media, on up through the traditional healthcare providers. This is a time for really the best and the brightest to rethink things, and hopefully one or two of the things I've mentioned here in these brief remarks will be helpful. Thank you very much.